post just in case.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm going to share the screen. I just mentioned earlier that I might be blacking out, but it won't be that long because I basically I know how to handle it now. At the most will be 3 minutes. Okay, so we're in. Oh, I don't. I hear planes now. When I hear planes, I always get nervous.
Yes.
We all do. Last week we talked a little bit about the introduction to everything. And I don't think I read this to you last week, but I think it's always a good idea, especially with this particular text, to remind us of what's going on. So first of all, we already know that this is a challenging text for us, all right? Because we're talking about, at the beginning, certainly about animal sacrifices, and they are offensive. They are offensive to me. I don't know about to you, but most of us, they are. It may be better than sacrificing people, for sure, but I don't know how the animals feel about that. So, but, you know, it was what was done in those days, you know, and it's funny. We always have these conversations. It was done in those days. And I that doesn't mean it's correct just because it was done in those days. And so, but it continued, you know, and sometimes, you know, even today, people still, they don't sacrifice an animal on holidays, but they do certain people, Jews as well, not only Muslims, will, you know, fatten a lamb for a holiday, and it will be shechted correctly, but they will have that lamb for Pesach. So it's still, even now, it's not a sacrifice, but it goes back to that idea there. So the question is why, right? And we'll just read a few little things here, and then we'll go to the text. So the rationale most frequently expressed is that gods need to be fed as well as propitiated, right? Okay, if you believe that. But the question is why? I mean, if you think about it, that famous midrash with Abraham, right? The famous midrash with Abraham is that he laughs at his father. Why do we have to bring food to the gods? They don't eat. Now it's true, something's going on here. Wait a minute, let me stop the shares. Somebody is playing around with and doodling on my, okay. Whoever's doing doodling now, for some reason it's showing up on my screen. I don't know why. So whoever's doodling, don't doodle. Going back to Abraham, so he laughed. You know, it's a famous midrash, and you know, so okay, but we can understand that. All right. The other idea is that that life and fertility are gifts from gods, for the gods. So we have to give something also in return, something precious in return. Again, this is for a God who, you know, eats and drinks and whatever. Finally, the idea that in a society where you're really close to your livestock and they almost take on human features, that domestic animals could substitute for a human life. Right? So this is, you know, another idea is that this gives us a channel to reduce violence between people. In other words, if you put your violent act on an animal, then you're, you know, in a form, you know, you're channeling your aggression. So if you read this, ritual slaughtering of animals as opposed to random killings, the explanation goes, would channel people's aggression into a socially constructed function and away from other forms of violence. Okay, maybe next week we'll read more of this, but what do you think about that? What are your thoughts about that idea?
Well, it seems to me that usually if people are cruel to animals, they graduate to being cruel to people.
Okay, that's a very good point. Okay. And it's one of the things that we all know, right? It's one of the things that we all know. When somebody shoots up a school,
Right,
and we say, oh, he used to play around with
right,
killing the neighborhood cat or torturing the
right.
neighborhood cat. Yeah, okay, that's a very good point. Okay, so now last week, if you remember, we looked at some sacrifices, and now we're looking at the meal offering, which in Hebrew is called karban mincha. Right? Rachel, would you like to read?
Okay, let me make this a little bigger.
Okay.
Oh, you don't have to. I just had to expand my screen. Okay, so are we reading when a person?
Yeah.
Okay. When a person presents an offering of meal to Adonai, the offering shall be of choice flour. The offerer shall pour oil upon it, lay frankincense on it, and present it to Aaron's sons, the priests. The priest shall scoop out of it a handful of its choice flour and oil, as well as all of its frankincense. And this token portion he shall turn into smoke on the altar as an offering by fire, a pleasing odor to Adonai. And the remainder of the meal offering shall be for Aaron and his sons, a most holy portion from Adonai's offerings by fire. When you present an offering of meal baked in the oven, it shall be of choice flour. Unleavened cakes with oil mixed in, or unleavened wafers spread with oil. If your offering is a meal offering on a griddle, pancakes, it shall be of choice flour with oil mixed in, unleavened. Break it into bits and pour oil on it. It is a meal offering. If your offering is a meal offering in a pan, it shall be made of choice flour and oil. When you present to Adonai a meal offering that is made in any of those ways, it shall be brought to the priest who shall take it up to the altar. The priest shall remove the token portion from the meal, is that the challah, and turn it into smoke on the altar as an offering by fire of pleasing odor to Adonai, and the remainder of the meal offering shall be for Aaron and his sons, a most holy portion from Adonai's offering by fire. No meal offering that you make to Adonai shall be made with leaven, for no leaven or honey may be turned into smoke as an offering by fire to Adonai. You may
Wow.
bring them to Adonai as an offering of choice products, but they shall not be offered up on the altar for a pleasing odor. You shall season every offering of meal with salt. You shall not omit from your meal offering the salt of your covenant with God. With all of your offerings, you must offer salt. Wow.
I didn't know that.
Huh.
Go on. Just finish.
Okay, if you bring a meal offering of
Okay,
first fruits,
actually that's first fruit. So
yeah,
yeah, okay.
yeah.
So let's go back. Did you notice any interesting things along the line?
Well, first of all, it seemed to me very difficult to be able to separate the individual elements of this dough. I mean, they were talking about taking out the frankincense, taking out in the very beginning, and I don't really understand that how you could separate that. And then was the word when it said to take a portion of it, that if that were yeast spread, it would be challah. Was the Hebrew word also challah for the
So,
separated portion of
I want to find it. I think it's
an unleavened?
uh, here, askarata. I
Oh,
think it's
okay. I was
which is a
surprised that you had to take a portion of an unleavened offering out.
right, right. Okay, what you have here, you have here really a lot of very interesting things. Um, and it's interesting, it's called a token, right? A token portion. Because the Hebrew is askarata. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a minute. I mean, these were the things that caught my eye. Maybe other things caught your eye. First of all, when you're talking about a grain offering, right? A grain offering, meal, grain, all right? That's two different translations here, right? I think grain makes more sense to us than meal, all right? And the Hebrew again is mincha. You know, that's not as simple as it sounds. What do you have to do with grain to make it edible?
Grind it. You have to grind it.
You have to grind it. You also have to sift it, right?
Right.
You have to
You
get
have
out
to
all
get rid of the shaft or whatever
Right.
it's called.
right. In other words, it's not a simple thing. You don't just
No.
bring it, you know, if it's going to be. On the other hand, the grain offer is for people who cannot afford animals or who cannot afford even birds, right?
Right.
So it's the fact that they're going to have to do extra work and whatever. But you know, I don't know about you, but I know that I don't do this. But my daughter Ariella, because she's married to somebody from Iraq, when she makes rice, she sifts the rice before she cooks it. Even though it's rice that has absolutely nothing in it, it comes from a package, and there's
Right.
no need whatsoever to fish. But she still will sift it and make sure there's no impurities in it. And on Pesach, it's like triple sifting. Again, with something which they use rice on Pesach.
Right.
So there's a lot of work involved, all right? But the idea is to make it edible. Why would God have to have something that's edible?
Can I ask something about the frankincense?
Yeah, frankincense. Why frankincense? What is frankincense?
Well,
It goes with myrrh, yes.
yeah, frankincense and myrrh. That I'm thinking of the little Whole
No,
Foods
but
place.
in Hebrew, the word for frankincense is levona. It's a spice.
Okay.
It's
Oh, really?
something that smells good. Yeah.
I know it smells good, but I guess I didn't think it was a spice. But
It's also used as incense.
yeah,
Right. Which it has a good smell. It has a
Right.
good smell. So,
but it's a spice. Okay.
You
and maybe
eat
it's
it?
not a spice. No, maybe it's not a spice. Maybe levona is what Norman just said. It's one of the
Innocent.
products that you put in. You know, these when you create these little smelly things. You know, the what do they make
The incense and what they use and
right. Yeah, you put it in a
Closet.
tip, something like that. Yeah, I forget what
Okay.
they're called. You know, those little.
Bags that you put in a drawer or a closet
Yeah.
with things that smell good.
Right. So that would be one of the things, you know, that has a nice smell. So you pour oil over it, and it's semolina. Is semolina couscous? No, I don't think so.
Semolina
Here it
is,
says semolina. What?
yes, I think it, wait a minute.
They
Semolina,
made it into an oil.
semolina, yes.
Semolina is couscous? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't
Okay.
think so.
So in other
It's
words, it's
not.
a choice, but it's a choice flour. Their idea of a flour would not be, I think, the flour that we would know today,
Right.
you know, which is totally
Very fine. Ours is very fine now. Theirs was probably thicker.
right. Even so,
Semolina has the wheat and
choice
has the
flour
germ and the
or
bran
fine-
removed.
Right. It's choice flour or fine semolina as opposed to fine flour. Okay.
It's cream
And
of
then we
wheat.
saw-
It's cream of wheat.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, cream of wheat.
Okay. That's great. That's great. Okay. So, so the priests, you know, they give it to they bring it, the offerer pours oil on it, puts frankincense on it, and gives it to the priests, to Aaron's sons. Okay. And then the priest scoops out of it a handful, right? And this really, when you said it looks like pancakes, it really is. You're taking a handful. They didn't have, I guess, that's the equivalent of a measuring cup, right? What is a
Right.
handful? A
Half
handful.
a cup.
No, but a half. A
Handful
measuring
Depends on your hand.
Look at your hand.
exactly.
That's a half a cup. It's not a whole cup.
So, so you bring it there, and then the priests, and this is the word which is so strange in the right. Where was the word that we were looking at before? And the word the token. All right, I didn't underline it here. I underlined it someplace else. right? And you should turn it into a token. I want to talk about the word token because the Hebrew, if you look here on the right, is askarata, all right? And that's like a remembrance, right? The word zachor is in there.
Zachor,
Oh.
right.
Right? So it's some sort of a remembrance. Right? And
Huh.
let's see what it says here.
Token portion, it goes together. Token portion.
The general engineer was to burn the entire grain. Milgram proposes limiting to one portion may have been a reaction to the widespread practice of burning cakes to Ishtar. That's interesting. Ishtar would have been a goddess. The economic self-interest of the priests in preserving much of the offering for their own consumption may have also played a role in this prescription. Okay, so of course they're going to end up eating it, right? So
Right.
they're right. But no one seems to be commenting on the word that what is a token when we say today a token? When we talk about a token,
A small portion or
what is it,
something
like
small.
a token of your love, you know?
Yeah. I mean, well, it goes back to maybe it's kind of a remembrance. It's something that you'll remember for that incident.
Right. It's a symbol. It's a symbol
Right.
of something, right?
Right.
So, so it's like you say when you say the Kiddush, Zecher L'Maaseh Breshit, in remembrance to what we had in Breshit when God created the
Right.
the world. Okay, and notice again, fragrant odor, right? In other words,
Right.
you want it to be a free offering, which is fragrant, okay? And then what's left over, right, is baked in the oven, right? Again, fine semolina, flatbread cakes, or unleavened wafers, all right? It's be cakes or wafers.
Right.
It's interesting. I wonder why they have the translation of wafers as opposed to cakes. But here, no, excuse me. Sorry, they both say wafers. Sorry.
Yeah.
Right.
So, okay. And now the griddle, when you made that joke about pancakes, but yes, right? It is sort of like that, okay? Right? And when you break it into bits and pour oil on it, it's a meal offering. What does that remind you of? I have an association with that. I'm curious if any.
Matzah brie.
If it had
Matzah
eggs in it, it would be matzah brie.
Exactly, that was mine. Right? Exactly. And by the way, the Hebrew is pitot otah, right? Pitot, but not pitot, patot otah pitim, like pitas, right? Patot, little pieces, otah pitim. You break it into little pieces, and the word is pita here, okay? And so that is a meal offering or a grain offering, right? Any questions up to this point? I want to just take a quick look at my washing machine. Maybe I can avoid the. It's not there yet, but maybe in some more seconds I'll check it out. Okay. So we talked already about the token portion. Now the next thing is interesting. What about no leaven? No offering shall be made with leaven. All right.
Or honey, or honey.
Or honey. Isn't that interesting?
Why honey? Why not honey?
Well, I'm asking you. What are your thoughts about that?
I think it would be sticky all over the altar.
Ah.
Okay.
There's no way to sweeten it unless they use honey.
Well, they're probably talking about date honey, by the way. That's what Walter is suggesting. It's date honey.
Ah,
Why? It could be bee honey.
Yeah, but the honey was pretty accessible with
Date honey, certainly, yeah.
much more. It's what we have today. What do we call the date honey today?
Call it date honey.
No, but there's in Hebrew. What's the day for?
Is
I
that
never remember.
Ceylon?
Ceylon.
Yes, it is Ceylon.
Ceylon. I'll write this down for any of you if you ever come to Israel. And
That's how much younger you are than we are, Norman.
No, I used to have a vegan grandchild.
I have a vegan grandchild who is
So-
very pregnant.
Right. Susan and Sheila Varshowskis are not here today. They're having a race. Who's going to be a great grandparent first?
Nice.
Okay, so
Huh.
so we have here. The only thing I can think about against honey, think to yourself about if you, let's say you make something in the oven and you put honey or jam or something like on top of your chicken or whatever, and you put it into the oven, very often what happens?
It burns.
It burns. So maybe you're not supposed to use
Which
that.
would not make it a pleasant odor because you have the burnt smell.
Well,
Right, right,
so you have to take it out soon enough.
Right.
right. So maybe, I don't know, maybe, or if it would be bee honey, I could understand because you could argue it's supposed to be a mincha, and so it shouldn't be, it shouldn't have something that comes from an animal like from bees. But date honey, the only thing I can think of might be, that it. But why leavened and unleavened? Now this is coming clearly from the Passover, laws. Right. But every day, very strange, very strange. Okay. But so he says here, leavened stuff.
Because it's burnt at the altar. So if you already burned it, it might be a problem. If you used it with the bread, if you used the date honey with the bread or the bits of pieces, you already cooked it. And then when you put it and they burned it, it would make a big mess.
Okay.
And smell bad.
Okay, it might be practical. Okay, good point. Good point. Okay, so it says here that leavened stuff and honey are not intrinsically taboo substances, but they must be excluded from the kind of offering that is burned on the altar. Again, for some reason, we don't really know what the reason is. And now we come to salt, okay, which of course is anyone who has or cardiologists are not very happy about it.
Don't eat it.
We had a friend, Benji, who was he was in our group. He's now back in the States, but he was a cardiologist. And he would, would be very upset whenever people would put salt on their food. Okay, but what is salt? What is salt? First of all, what is the nature
It's a preservative.
It's a preservative. What else?
It adds
Gives
taste.
flavor.
Yeah.
It adds flavor. It adds flavor. Okay. So it's a preservative. It adds flavor. It can also be good for wounds, I think, in some places. That's, I'm told very often you should gargle with salt water.
Right.
Right. And apparently it's also associated with a Brit, right? A Brit Melach, right? Below Tashbit Melach Brit Elohecha. In other words, it's associated. Now, by the way, salt in ancient times was very, very, very expensive. Right? People who had salt, people would trade salt to. So salt is something special. So by salting things, and everything has to be salted, right? Notice 3 times, you shall season your offering with salt. You shall not omit salt. It doesn't say that. Salt with all your offerings. You can't 3 times. I mean, that's, over the top. Okay. So what does he say here? Throughout the Mediterranean, here, the indispensable, you want to read this, Norman? The indispensable presence of salt. You want to read that?
The indispensable presence of salt may ultimately derive from the fact that the sacrifice was originally imagined as a divine meal, and that seasoning with salt was felt to be necessary in order to make the food palatable. For God, I guess. But throughout the Mediterranean, salt was associated with covenants, and the phrase in Numbers 1819, a perpetual covenant of salt, suggests that the link between salt and permanently binding covenants may have been reinforced by salt's efficacy as a preservative. It preserves covenants also.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Okay, we don't have to worry about blackouts now. Okay, so isn't that interesting?
Yes.
So in other words, the food is supposed to be palatable for the gods, right? Now, to me, this is what I call avodah zarah. What's avodah zarah in English? A polite term for avodah zarah. Norman, how would you translate avodah zarah politely?
Was it blue collar?
No, avodah zarah.
Yeah, it is blue collar work, right?
What?
Blue collar work.
No, not foreign. No, avodah zarah is like to when you worship gods, not our God, but gods, or it's you know when you worship the stars or the sun and the moon, right?
Yeah.
Idol worshippers. Okay. To me, this whole idea here is that a divine. If the idea is that food should be palatable to God, that's we're running into idol worship. Okay. But more on a practical level, since salt was associated with confidence for some reason, and it probably is because of the fact that it was a preservative, but also because it was expensive. So by doing
Right.
something expensive, you are showing, you're showing the value of something. Okay. And now we have, Norman, you want to continue reading about the fruits now?
And the number 14.
Yeah. If you
And
bring a
if
meal
you,
over.
and if you bring forward an offering of first fruits to the Lord, new ears of grain parched in fire, grits of fresh ears you shall bring forward the offering of your first fruits. And you shall put oil upon it, and you shall place frankincense on it. It is a grain offering. And the priest shall turn its token portion to smoke from its grits and from its oil, together with all its frankincense, as a fire offering to the Lord.
So is it different? Is there any difference between the first fruits, like the new ears of grain? They didn't have corn in those days. Corn wasn't brought to the world till much later. So what would this mean? Can you eat it? I don't think you could eat it. You bring in the new ears of grain, right? It doesn't say anything about eating it afterwards, right?
No.
No.
So presumably it's, you bring like raw,
No, and
Yeah.
then you're gonna make smoke.
right.
So
I
you
mean,
are gonna cook it.
But by saying ears parched with fire, is that really referring to corn, which can become
No. I said there is no corn. No, I'm joking. I was saying in those days, it sounds like corn, but it wasn't. No, but you have ears of grain. You have the grain, think about the way grain looks, with the,
Yeah, but what other grain is kernel form?
no, it doesn't say kernels here. There's no kernels.
Okay.
No, no, I'm saying, as far as I know, corn came from South America, if I'm not mistaken, or even from America. I think it came from the Indians, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
I mean,
Yeah.
it was native here, so
And then it made its way elsewhere. Okay.
it's a
Okay, so we have plenty of time to read. I had planned to read 2 chapters today. Now we have another, so we now have another one. Let me just stop for 1 second because I want to just go, before we go on, I just want to just remind us what we did last week in terms of what we did last week. So last week we had a burnt offering, right, which had to do with an unblemished, right, cattle, unblemished, okay? And that was an olah. It was an olah that went up to God, and it was burnt offering. Also had pleasing odor, and the sheep or the goats or whatever had to be a male without blemish. Okay, so you could also give pigeons or doves
Doves, right.
to as if you're again if you don't have that much money, and we saw that also can be burnt and okay, so we saw that. Okay. So now let's go back. So now we just had the Mincha. Now we have another. Let me share the screen again. Screen. We're up to chapter 3. Okay. Louise, would you like to read if you're offering?
Sure. If your offering is a sacrifice of well-being, if you offer of the herd, whether a male or a female, you shall bring before Adonai one without blemish. You shall lay a hand upon the head of your offering and slaughter it at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And Aaron's sons, the priests, shall dash the blood against all sides of the altar. Then present from the sacrifice of well-being as an offering by fire to Adonai, the fat that covers the entrails and all the fat that is about the entrails, the 2 kidneys and the fat that is on them, that is at the that is at the loins, and the protuberance on the liver, which you shall remove with the kidneys. Aaron's sons shall turn these into smoke on the altar, with the burnt offering which is upon the wood that is on the fire, as an offering by fire of pleasing odor to Adonai. And if your offering for a sacrifice of well-being to Adonai is from the flock, whether a male or a female, you shall offer one without blemish. If you present a sheep as your offering, you shall bring it before Adonai and lay a hand upon the head of your offering. It shall be slaughtered before the tent of meeting, and Aaron's son shall dash its blood against all sides of the altar. Then present as an offering by fire to Adonai the fat from the sacrifice of well-being, the whole broad tail, which you shall remove close to the backbone, the fat that covers the entrails, and all the fat that is about the entrails. Sounds messy.
Yes.
The 2 kidneys and the fat that is on them, that is at the loins, and the protuberance on the liver, which you shall remove with the kidneys. The priest shall turn these into smoke on the altar as food, an offering by fire to Adonai. And if your offering is a goat, you shall bring it before Adonai and lay a hand upon its head. It shall be slaughtered before the tent of meeting, and Aaron's son shall dash its blood against all sides of the altar. Okay. Then present as your offering from it as an offering by fire to Adonai, the fat that covers the entrails and all the fat that is about the entrails, the 2 kidneys and the fat that is on them, that is at the loins, and the protuberance on the liver, which you shall remove with the kidneys. The priest shall turn these into smoke on the altar as food, and offering by fire of pleasing odor. All fat is Adonai's. It is a law for all time throughout the ages. In all your settlements, you must not eat any fat or any blood.
Any blood. Or any blood.
Any blood. Okay. A period, I guess.
Period. I'm gonna put a period in there. Okay. So a lot of these things, by the way, end up also being connected to some of the laws of kashrut, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
First of all, let's talk about a sacrifice of well-being, okay? Well-being, which in Hebrew is shlamim, right? And of course, you all hear the word shalom there,
Right.
which has the idea of peace. It has the idea of complete, right? Shalem, it's complete. It has all sorts of associations. He mentions here whole, repay, like l'shalem, to pay for something. Greeting, like shalom or peace, right? And And that's what Jacob Milgram sees it as a well-being sacrifice. But another commentator, Baruch Levine, argues that it means a sacred gift of greeting. Isn't that interesting? Right?
Wow.
And so that the translation that Alter is using, right? His translation is communion sacrifice. Isn't that interesting?
Hmm.
So what's the difference there? That's a big difference, a huge difference. If Zebach Shlamim is like a perfect, a whole, right? A whole. And that's why it has to be without a blemish, right? And notice you could also offer from the herd male or female. Last time we saw in the first one, the Olah had to be a male, if you remember.
Right, right.
The Shlamim is different, okay? And here you also lay a hand on the head, right, of the offering. I noticed it with the goat, but you do that as well. In other words, so why, the whole idea of why lay a hand on the head of the offering? We'll talk about that in a minute. So what's the difference between Milgram's understanding as a well-being sacrifice, one of completion and wholeness, and Levine's communion sacrifice? Is there any difference to you? What would be the purpose of the sacrifice if it's, I know the communion sounds a little Christian, doesn't it?
I've actually never heard that term before at all. I don't know what to think.
Well, in Christianity, you have communion. Communion is
Right.
a term that's used all the time.
But not in terms of like a sacrifice.
Well,
Yeah.
it means that the purpose of the sacrifice is communion. Communion with whom?
With God.
With God. Or maybe if you're all eating it together, maybe communion with people. I mean, we don't know.
Right.
Okay. Anyway, it's very interesting that
Weird.
this word shalom, shalem, you know. Norman, did you want to say something?
No.
No, okay. And then B'samach yado, he puts his hand on the, now this reminds us a little bit of Yom Kippur. When you lay, I mean, I always read the Yom Kippur Torah
Right.
reading in our shul, and so I know it very well. So you're laying the hands on the offering, B'samach yado, al rosh haSa'ir hachai. Sa'ir hachai is the, on Yom Kippur, not here, right? Why do you lay hands on an offering?
You lay hands on your children when you give them
Yeah,
the same
yeah.
thing. It's when you make a bracha over them.
Yeah, there's something very intimate about laying your hands on the offering. And you do when you have the Friday night blessings over the family. The father or mother blesses the kids with by laying hands. So,
Right.
so this was very, very interesting, and I might fit in with the idea of communion as well, right? Part of communion, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not that knowledgeable about what goes on in the church, but I think part of communion is the priest laying hands on the person getting communion. I may be mistaken about that.
Is communion part of community?
And it's part of community. Very nice. Yes. Yes. Okay. Now, modern readers, all of you kept on saying ich, right? Ich. And there's something to the ich, right? The ich factor. Modern readers, how about Susan Gross? How about your reading this? Modern readers.
Maybe you want to put perplexity here. Modern readers may be perplexed as to why his sacred text should devote such attention to details of butchering, and in particular, why the suet covering the inner organs must be stripped from them and burned for the deity alone. Taboo for human consumption. No suet pudding allowed in the Israelite diet. This is, of course, a priestly text, and the officiants in the cult need to know precisely how to go about their business. But the anthropologist, Mary Douglas, proposes that all the details of sacrificial butchering are fraught with symbolic significance. For her, Leviticus is a prime instance of subtle and elaborate and analogical thinking in contradistinction to the analytic thinking with which we are more familiar. Thus,
Wait, let's stop. You'll continue, but let's stop because this is a little bit getting a little bit complicated. So
yeah,
first, what is suet?
fat.
Fat. Okay. So we're not supposed to be eating fat, which is good, I guess.
But we eat fat, so everybody eats fat all the time.
There's fat and there's fat, apparently, but cover it should be burnt, okay? So the fact is that the priests have to know exactly what they're doing. So when they're chopping up the animal and going into all the details of getting it organized, they have to know exactly what they're doing. So Mary Douglas, who I mentioned last week in the introduction, who wrote her very well-known book, Purity and Danger, Purity and Danger, has her own way of looking at all of this. So for her, it's very, very subtle, and it's also an analogy is being made here. So now, following Nachmanides, who is a little bit different than Mary Douglas, but she is actually following in the footsteps of Nachmanides. Go on. Susan?
Okay, thus following Nachmanides, she sees a system of correspondence between the tripartite structure of the tabernacle, Holy of Holies, sanctuary, and outer court, and Mount Sinai as it is represented in Exodus, the summit where only Moses may go, the perimeter of dense cloud restricted to Aaron, his sons, and the 70 elders, and the foot of the mountain to which the people have access. She goes on to propose that the animal sacrifice is correspondingly divided in three: the entrails, the intestines, and the genitals at the summit of the butchering pile, the midriff area with the covering of fat to be burned on the altar, and the head and meat sections which may be consumed by the priests and the people. The suet, she contends, that divides the body at the diaphragm below the lower ribs is not just a covering. It corresponds in the body to the boundary of the forbidden sacred space on the mountain.
Who would have thought of that? Yeah.
Wow.
Well, see, obviously that's hers, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. So you have here, well,
she did.
apparently she's riffing off of Nachmanides. So you have the tripartite structure, Holy of Holies, sanctuary, outer court. Okay.
Right.
And then you have you could also say Moses, Aaron, and the elders if you want,
Right.
or maybe Aaron, the elders, and the people. You
Could even be Aaron and his sons. That's three too.
Right. You can do it you can find your tree
Right.
way you
To
want.
find three.
But this is what's amazing, is that she takes the entrails, intestines, and genitals. That's unbelievable. I find this a little bit off,
That's the part nobody eats, so that's
right. And so
all
she's
together.
explaining, right. So she's
Yucky
explaining
stuff.
why. Exactly. She's explaining why. Okay. So that's and then she has here when she talks about the fire offering bread, right, in verse 11, right? So you still have bread here, right? You still have bread,
Right.
no matter what, right? Yeah, the goat. The idea of the goat with the idea with the goat that you again, and here v'samachet yado al rosh. Again, it's very much like, but here it's different. You do it in front of the Ohel Moed, All right, did they do that with the first one? I don't think so.
They,
Yes,
they didn't say anything
no,
about
no,
that.
no, it did, before the tent of the meeting. In other words, the slaughtering is taking place before the tent of the meeting. Why before the tent of the meeting? Who's inside?
The people.
No, who's inside the tent of the meeting? God. That's his dwelling place.
God, that's where he lived.
Ah, yeah. That's what I think.
Okay.
So that's why they're doing it there. And then they, obviously nothing's too far. Remember, this is before the temple. We're out there in the desert, right?
Right.
Everything is folded up. It's like going camping, fold up everything. And they, dash the blood against all sides of the altar. Why do that? I mean, that sounds pretty horrible.
Yeah, why? I wanted to ask that from the very beginning.
Yeah, why do that?
Splashing it blood around, which makes a terrible stink. It's not a pleasant odor.
Right. Why do that? I never understood why. Maybe to come up with some ideas.
Well, could it be that you've made the sacrifice of this animal, and maybe the blood on the, no, I'm really making this up, okay? So maybe the blood on the altar is reminding of that you've made the sacrifice, but it's a sacrifice for a higher order. Does that sound crazy?
No, it doesn't sound crazy at all.
Fine.
But what is
Why splashing it?
By doing that, dashing the blood. Well,
Dashing.
dashing, but it doesn't here. Well, actually, here the word is fling. What's the word in Hebrew? Zarku. It's also
Through it. Through it.
But what the whole idea of
Throw it. They could stick their hand in a bucket of blood and throw it around, or it just sounds so disgusting.
I know. Okay, so the whole idea.
Pescatarian, this whole thing sounds disgusting.
Yeah.
Has anybody discussed how many sacrifices were done, like in a day?
Who knows?
I mean,
Which kind of
we're
I mean,
talking
if
a big
everybody's supposed
city.
to bring one, that's a lot.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah,
Right.
but a lot
Of animals.
That's a lot of dissection of these animals.
right.
And scraping fat off this and fat off that. And how can they, what do
Because
they
you can't
have,
eat the fat. Only
it's like
God.
a factory.
Well, or it might be like a lahavdil,
An assembly line.
a surgery ward.
A disassembly line.
Right.
Right. A disassembly. Or a surgical ward, not so much today, but, like during wartime when you have.
No, because this is specific parts you had to get to. You couldn't just say, okay, we'll take this arm or this leg of this animal. You can't do that. You have to go inside and get to the specific place and scrape it off that place.
Right. Okay, whatever. Anyway,
Yeah.
We have a problem here. So I think it's really also interesting is the idea that all fat is God's, right? So God is going to end up having a high cholesterol level, right?
Right. It didn't work.
So here, the commentary here, on no fat and no blood shall you eat. The prohibition on consuming blood is grounded in the idea of the sacredness of life. In Genesis 9:4, we actually just read Noach last week, and so you're now allowed to have meat for the first time, but you can't
Have
eat
blood.
The prohibition on eating fat seems strictly related to the fact that it's reserved for the deity alone, all right? And if one follows Douglas, from Mary Douglas, because it bears a barrier of exclusion, right? In a system of analogies between body and sacred cosmos, okay? That there's only God can eat the fat because that's the barrier, also in the body itself. And it's instructive when the 17th century Messianic leader, Shabtai Tzvi, wanted to demonstrate that he was empowered to abrogate the Torah, what did he do? He publicly consumed suet.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. And that violation of that arbitrary prohibition and a violation, they could scarcely have given him much pleasure. Unless it was, you know, with grivinous. You know what grivinous is?
Yeah. Loved it. My mom
Grivinous
used to
is
make it.
delicious. That's when
Pure fat.
Yeah.
you take chicken fat
The
and
skin.
you, yeah, the skin, and you
It is
make it.
best.
I'm sure all of you have mothers who used to do that once upon a time.
Called
Yeah.
grimace.
I don't think so.
Grivinous.
Right, right, grivinous. Okay, so you're learning a lot of things, Geraldine, that you don't know.
I know my face has been torn up. You know, when I think of the suet, is it suet? I can remember down in Lexington Market them displaying it for people to buy. You know,
Right.
buy
They
suet.
made suet pie.
Well, I don't know about the pie. This, as I can remember, it's like in blocks or something
Mhm.
that they could buy and take with them. And
And you use it to fry.
is
Right.
that what
Use it to fry, but you could also use it to make the pastry with the flour.
to
You
fry?
know,
I thought you said to use it as a pie.
Right,
Okay.
what was Crisco was never kosher, right? And then they had kosher
Sure it
Crisco,
was. Well, yeah, Crisco was kosher.
but they had other
Yeah.
things that were not kosher, I remember.
Yes.
Homogenized
Lard.
oil
And
or something.
lard.
It's called
Lard.
lard.
So, I
Lard.
mean,
Not kosher.
right,
Not kosher.
so,
I don't know the difference between lard and suet, but maybe there isn't any.
okay. Anyway, we'll continue next week, I hope. At 6 o'clock, I'll send out a notice. And
6 o'clock for whom?
for Israelis
Okay.
instead of 7. That way I'll be able to teach. Otherwise, I won't be able to teach because we have to go to the valley, whatever. And Trika already gave me orders when I have to leave the house. So I'll send a notice. Okay, so see you. I'm being picked up in about 20 minutes. This was great.
Safe trip.
This was really great. Instead of sitting around being nervous, waiting for a taxi driver, I was able to talk to you and do a dishwasher. Oh, bye-bye.
Naomi, I wanted to
Bye.
tell you real quick that I went to the Shiva for Rabbi Arthur Waskow. And it was very interesting. And then we had a chance to speak. So I sang Go Down Moses to begin with. And then I said that he is in my genealogy files and went on to present that, how I knew of him. And it was a pleasure, full circle, for me to be there. And his wife said, you know, that I guess a book that's not come out yet, that that he spoke of my uncle a couple of times in the book. And it turns out that she worked at Riverside Church, where my uncle was a minister for there for years.
Yeah.
And so she sent me her email address, and we'll connect later.
Oh, wonderful. By the way,
Small world.
you could send her my regards because she used to teach English as a foreign language, and I knew both Art and her as well. Yeah.
Well, I told her about our class, so
yeah, okay. No, she
Cool.
she may not remember me, but I certainly remember her.
she does not
Okay,
remember
so
me.
I'm stopping.
Safe travels.
Okay, bye-bye.
Have a
Yeah,
good week,
bye.
everybody. Travel safely. Yeah.
Okay,
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you, Naomi.
stop recording.